Well, it was a bit of entertainment for those who saw in the end. The final game between India and the West Indies ends in slightly unfortunate fashion for the Windies. Fabian Allen, put your heart out to him, had just 5 to defend, managed to stretch it to the very last ball. But a little bit of fortune going Manish Pandey's way to ensure that India just crossed over the line. We thought it would be easier when Rishabh Pant and Shikhar Dhawan had played a couple of excellent knocks. 92 for Shikhar Dhawan, who regains a bit of form ahead of Australia. Rishabh Pant with his first T20I 50, 58 not out of 38 for him, but it still managed to go down to the final ball after Nicholas Pooran's 53 propelled the West Indies to 181. To look back at what is now a 3-0 series win for India, leaving the Windies winning just one game out of the 10 that they've played on this tour. On ESPN Cricket for Matchday, Phil Simmons and Ajit Agarkar. Funny last ball, funny stuff on that last ball, but over the course of the 40 overs, better side seems to have won.
Oh yeah, clearly. I mean, West Indies did bat well and posed a good total, but India were well in control. I mean, that 2020 can sometimes go that way. You know, you feel like a team's cruising and a few balls change the complexion of the game. India should have done it a little bit easier. But lots of positives. Shikhar Dhawan's runs particularly, because Rohit Sharma missing out put the onus on some of the other batsmen to chase down a biggish total now. So Rishabh Pant and Shikhar Dhawan clearly huge positives for India.
Does that last over in some way hide the reality that this was looking to be a fairly comfortable chase otherwise for India, Phil?
Yeah, I think the last 2 or 3 overs, it changed things and it made it look a lot harder than it was when Pant and Dhawan were going. So, but it turned out to be a brilliant last over.
Yeah, it surely did, and begs the question as to why Carlos Brathwaite didn't have either one of those two spinners complete their quota of 4. There's a lot of seam in the middle where both Pant and Shikhar Dhawan seem quite comfortable, and even O'Shane Thomas, who's been the pick of the bowlers, went for a few. We thought the spinners might have more of a role, Phil, wouldn't we?
Yeah, I think it might have been the case of 2 left-handers batting and the left-arm spinner bowling into them. Maybe that's what he was thinking about in that situation. But again, if you've tried everyone else, then they should have gotten a chance at the 2 left-handers.
It's bizarre, isn't it? Most modern-day captains don't want to bowl a offie to a right-hander and a left-arm spinner to a left-hander. It's there was enough grip in the surface. I mean, a good ball is a good ball to most people. And the way Rishabh Pant was approached his innings, he was always going to try and hit you. You always have a chance when a batsman's coming after you to get his wicket. So, yeah, I mean, very surprised that either of them didn't finish their quota. Even the first 6 overs, I mean, if you had to really pick on things tactically, I mean, they're obviously decided no bowler is going to bowl 2 overs in that period. But O'Shane Thomas has got Shikhar Dhawan out 2 or 3 times through this time limit. Yeah, the first one day and then in the T20 as well. So you may as well give him a crack, especially after you got Rohit Sharma out. He bowled the first over and then the 6th over. So a couple of things there because, you know, at least they fought better than they have in the first couple of games.
Much improved the West Indies, but it was the might of India that eventually takes this series in a scoreline that fairly accurately reflects the dominant side in it. Let's speak of the positives for India today and then do a reflection of the West Indies. Like you said, Ajit, you wanted someone other than Rohit Sharma to put the hand up while Shikhar Dhawan carried the mantle from one end. That Rishabh Pant innings was an important one.
Yeah, very good, and I'm glad, you know, he started a little bit slowly or more watchful. Maybe there's enough advice coming around that, you know, you have enough ability. Don't try and whack the first ball you face and try and hit it into the next city. But maybe he was watchful. But I like that he's still trusting his instinct, even if there was some chatter over the commentary that there's a fielder in the deep. But because of that innings, India then didn't have to get too many in that last over. Can always get a bit tricky if you leave too much for that last couple of overs, and then like we saw, you lose a wicket, you know, couple of dot balls, and suddenly the pressure builds. Then you don't think that as clearly. So yeah, he needed that sort of inning after a couple of sort of failures with you know, shots, which I'm quite happy if he approaches that way. With experience, he'll only get better and pick the ball better, or you know, not start making lesser mistakes. So I think that instinct is really important
Yeah.
to have it. It is dangerous for the opposition when someone bats in that fashion.
Yeah, I mean, I know what you're saying because there's lots of commentary from Sanjay Manjrekar while the Pant innings was on, almost wondering whether he was playing a shot too many. He's an interesting character, Phil. You know, as a coach, as someone managing this kid, there's so much talent. He's been guilty of playing perhaps the shot either too early or just playing it and it not coming off. Whereas today he played it enough times and it came off. Would you try and temper with the way Rishabh Pant plays or just let him be?
I tend to let him be because I want him to learn what is when the situation demands for him to play like today and when the situation demands for him to go out in his normal way. So I would always leave him and try and get him to understand when the situation requires what.
In a way, it was a good thing to see a young cricketer who arguably is fighting for his place in the limited over side and with two failures. If he swings one too early and gets a single digit score, it suddenly looks quite bad. But it didn't change the way he wasn't playing for his runs as sometimes we've seen players
which is a natural thing to happen
Yes.
as well. It's not. I mean, most players will think that way, and that's what I meant by he's trusted his instinct. Maybe at the start, okay, he was worrying about getting off strike, taking the single. But once that slower ball was bowled in the middle of the pitch and he smashed one straight, that's when he started going. And I'm glad he's playing that way because that sort of ability in the middle of the innings to suddenly you can change the game. Most opposition captains will be wary. You know you might get an opportunity with him to get him out, but if he bats 30 or 35 balls or 40 balls, you know it's going to be trouble for your team. So I'm glad that in that middle over sometimes it's a bit difficult when on a slower pitch where bowlers can create that pressure. So yeah, very impressive innings.
The aim of this series was to identify if there's a second wicket keeper, which is the reason MS Dhoni was rested or left out. He seems to play the paradox to MS Dhoni where don't leave it late, get it quickly so you won't have to chase more than 6 and over in the last 2 or 3.
Yeah, I mean,
he's got the ability, almost like Dhoni had in his heyday.
Yeah, I mean, but MS Dhoni could finish those games at that point. Unfortunately, at the moment, if you leave too much too late, he hasn't got the job done in recent times. So you'd rather approach it the other way. And sometimes when you're younger, there's a little bit less pressure on you. You can bat a lot freer, but you can clearly see the ability that he has. I think even when O'Shane Thomas came and he's been bowling fairly quickly throughout this series. You could see the instinct just take over and just hit him over square leg, much like what Adam Gilchrist sometimes used to do. So, yeah, really important innings for him. Just to know then how to, like Phil said, learn how to approach every innings. The more he plays, the better for India.
All right. Now looking back at this game, in spite of the series being gone and like we said, Phil, towards the second part of that innings, it seemed like India were going to go away with it comfortably. The loss seemed to hurt to Fabian Allen, to Carlos Brathwaite. They seemed like they really wanted to nick one or at least force it to a super over. If they look back at this game, are there little moments that they might regret? Perhaps in the first innings, not pushing a little sooner to get it past 190, 200 could have made the difference.
Yeah, I think there's a few overs, and I think, as we mentioned before, Bravo got stuck for a while. At the same time, Puran came in and lifted things. I think maybe earlier on, as we alluded to earlier, that O'Shane Thomas should have maybe had another over at Shikhar Dhawan and see if he can get him out. It's just little things, and I think at the end of this game, it turned out to be the type of match we envisaged for all 3 games. And if we'd gotten all 3 games like this, it would have been nice. But there's a few little points to work on. All
right, takeaways for the West Indies from this T20 leg of the tour. We've spoken at length about Shai Hope and Shimron Hetmeyer being the positives from the one-dayers. The tests were a disappointment, but from this T20 series, it's been disappointing for the West Indies overall. But what can they still take away, Phil?
I think definitely O'Shane Thomas and the way he has bowled all through. I think Nicholas Puran's knock today. He has come in and he showed at this level he has the ability. Unfortunately, Hetmeyer and Hope didn't carry on their form from the ODIs, but Puran and O'Shane Thomas, I think, are the big pluses in this T20 series.
It's never a bad time to get runs, but it's certainly a much better time when you do it a month before what should be another important IPL auction.
Yeah, it always is. And with 8 franchises looking to get their teams better or more organized for the upcoming season, yeah, it's always an ideal moment. And that sort of innings today that we saw from Nicholas Pooran or the ability that we've seen from O'Shane Thomas, although he's very new to this stage, that sort of pace is always welcome by most franchise.
Yeah, and indirectly it's a headache for the selectors because as good as these guys become, if they become that good for T20 cricket, here we go again on that debate between West Indies versus private franchise cricket. But that's for the West Indies. As far as India go, they set out with some objectives in this T20 series. Obviously the second wicket keeper, they rested Virat Kohli too, they rested their bowlers in and around. Have they ticked as many boxes before going to Australia for the T20s now?
Yeah, I mean that Shikhar Dhawan runs were really welcome. I think he's been an important member for India in one-day cricket or T20 cricket. And going to Australia, those runs were. He's not had a great time in this series, whether it's one days or T20. So played really well. Again, when Rohit Sharma got out, that's when you needed someone to stand up. Played a match-winning knock. Rahul disappointed again. Yeah. He's thin ice at the moment, at least in one-day cricket and T20 cricket. He's got to start getting more runs because you can. Everyone knows the ability he has. He's an experienced guy now, so he needs to start getting runs. Khalil, another positive throughout this one day and T20s, kept improving as the tournament gone. And Chahal, I'm just delighted he's come back and got to bowl, because sometimes you can lose a little bit of confidence just sitting out after you've been doing so well. But you can understand it was just to get the balance right.
Yeah.
And Krunal Pandya has had a decent game, the first one that they played. So yeah, there's some positives.
Are there still some concerns about the ideal balance of the side, especially in Hardik Pandya's absence?
Yeah, I mean the problem is none of the top six unfortunately bowl, and then you're playing two wicket keepers, which makes it difficult. Hardik Pandya obviously helps that problem because he has the ability to bat at number 6 in a T20 game or one day for that matter, and give you overs or his full quota of overs more often than not. So it is a big loss. I mean, anytime you lose a guy who has ability to do both, and that's why sometimes this two keeper sort of top 6 for me is a little bit spoils the balance a bit.
All right, Phil, looking at the Australia series from an India point of view, does this brilliance of certain parts hide the vulnerability elsewhere, or is this good enough for you as far as India T20? They'll obviously get Virat Kohli back, they'll get Bumrah and Kuldeep back, but there are still some questions about this Indian team?
There are always questions about every team, but I think Pant today has answered one of the questions. I think Dinesh Karthik has been excellent in his last 4 or 5 T20 games. So it's a good headache to have in the middle. And everybody who was looking at just getting Rohit, Shikhar and Virat out now have to look at Pant, and maybe an MS comes back. They still have that. So I think it's a strong lineup and a headache for the selectors going to Australia.
All right, Phil Simmons, it's been an absolute pleasure having your thoughts through the course of this bilateral series. I apologize that the West Indies didn't give you enough bright moments, but it was an absolute privilege for us to have your honest and sharp analysis through the course. Thanks very much, Phil.
Thank you. Thank you.
And many thanks to Ajit Agarkar, who now takes a well-deserved break working through the Indian summer, as he often tends to for us. But enjoy your time, Ajit. Always a pleasure. So and thank you for being with us right through this bilateral series, the only bit of cricket India had at home in their home summer. It's a massive Australian summer that follows. You'll have extensive coverage building up to it on ESPN Cricinfo.com, as well as our mobile app, where you can also follow how the India-Pakistan Women's World T20 game is going, and of course all the games in the World T20 at the Caribbean as well. Plenty of international cricket too, so get up to speed with it all. The story in Chennai is that India have taken the T20 series 3-0. Bye-bye.